Bum bum bottom 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 bum bum
Doobie doobie da da da, doobie doobie da da da, doobie doobie da da da, doobie doobie da da, doobie doobie da da, doobie doobie da da, doobie doobie da da da, ba-da-da 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 ba-ba-ba. Doopy doopy da.
You are now in session with the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast. I'm Lisa Gullickson.
I'm Brad Gullickson. You are so excited right now.
I'm trying to bring it.
You are bringing it.
And each month, we evaluate a different iconic romance within the four-color realm. In this episode, we're recovering from our first ever New York Comic-Con, chatting with cartoonist Matt Lesniewski about his new comic book series, Faceless in the Family, currently crowdfunding through Zoop.
Not only currently crowdfunding through Zoop, but already obliterating its stretch goals.
Which we knew was going to happen from the beginning because we have the utmost faith in Matt Lesniewski.
Yeah, but as we will get into in that conversation, that was a faith that maybe Matt didn't have. And I'm just so happy for him to see it, to see this comic hit its goals so quickly. I think within 3 hours, it hit its goal. And that is something Matt was not necessarily expecting.
Yeah, we got this guy at a very vulnerable time as an artist.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you all to listen to this conversation. But before we do that, I think we should really dig into our experience at New York Comic-Con. As you said, a first for us. Lisa, it's been a few days since we've returned. How are you feeling about the whole experience?
I can officially say I love New York Comic-Con. Every Comic-Con has its own kind of character.
Yeah, totally.
San Diego Comic-Con is still the biggest, the most spectacular in terms of sights to see, things to do. It's also a little bit more expansive. New York Comic-Con was kind of hyper-focused business mode, but in a fun way.
Yeah, for us, we really did treat it like a networking experience. We were able to meet up with so many past guests, Daniel Warren Johnson, Scott Snyder, Tom King, Nick Dragotta, Christian Ward, Chris Condon, David Pepose, Neil Clyde. It was this tour we did to make sure that hey, we can actually see each other in person, not just via Zoom or Zencastr.
It was kind of like a high school reunion,
yeah,
except for you were happy to see everyone.
Ecstatic to see everyone.
And I didn't go to my high school reunion because I wasn't interested.
Yeah, I never went to the high school reunion
But I've
either.
seen movies about it.
Yeah. Romy and Michelle. That looked like a good one.
We didn't do a dance number, though, and I'm disappointed.
Sad. But maybe at our next New York Comic-Con, we can convince all our guests to do a musical number with us.
I love that. A New York Comic-Con flash mob. It would totally work because another quirk of New York Comic-Con is way more cosplays included a boombox or speaker of some sort. So it is not unusual to just walk around blasting noise.
Well, what I loved is that the cosplay photographers would bring the boomboxes with them.
Yes.
And they would set up music depending on who the cosplay was in front of them so they could get their subject into a mood and take some rad photographs. I like that initiative.
I think that it was meant to help them W-E-R-K work.
Yes. You bring up the comparison, which I think is natural to San Diego Comic-Con, because that is the
length by which I measure all things.
Well, I mean, San Diego Comic-Con is our favorite Comic-Con. It's something that we've been doing for 11 years now. Maybe even longer than that. It's hard to keep track of the dates given the whole pandemic situation. But you go to New York Comic-Con, you hear that it is on the same level as San Diego, and I think crowd-wise, that's almost true. Again, it's hard to decide.
If you go by density.
I think, we're at a period with New York Comic-Con and with San Diego Comic-Con where it's in a state of recovery, where people are returning to the shows. So to do a one-on-one comparison with what San Diego was pre-pandemic is probably foolish, but it does feel like, yes, it's very dense, the way that San Diego is. It's not as media focused, generally pop culture media focused as San Diego. There are TV shows, there are movies, there are video games, there is tabletop, but it doesn't seem as expansive as San Diego. It does feel like it is much more of a comic convention, which is a big bonus.
Well, especially because the physical spaces at New York Comic Con are much more delineated.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't think I even saw the tabletop room until Sunday. I was like, whoa, there's a whole nother room here.
Yes.
So there were, like, a few tracks at New York Comic Con. There was the comic book track where you could just do comic book things. Then there was the movie TV track. There was also a separate cosplay stage.
Yep.
There was a queer pride stage. And then there was also an anime stage. So I think that depending on who you are and how you want to curate your experience, you can have 4 very different cons.
And there's 3 levels. Well, there's like 5 levels to the Javits Center, but there's like 3 that you focus on. And, there's like the mall area where all the food court is and where all the cosplayers get their photos taken. There's the show floor, which is one above. And then below, there are the 3 big rooms, the tabletop room, the artist alley, and the autograph room. And if you wandered into any of those rooms, you could spend an entire day in those massive halls.
There are 2 things where New York Comic Con far outclasses San Diego Comic Con. And that is the food at New York Comic Con is way better, way more options.
Shockingly better.
Way more vegan and vegetarian options.
San Diego, you can eat hot dogs, nachos, and coffee. That is it. But at the Javits Center, it's like a food court, and you can get Lisa's dumplings.
They were literally a stand called Lisa's Dumplings, and we did eat there more than once.
And their vegetarian dumplings might be the best vegetarian dumplings that I've ever had, and that is wild to say.
Then there was the fried tofu bao bun that was so good.
Yeah, there's like curry stands. There's an empanada food truck.
It was truly a feast for the senses. Every different corner of every room and hall had a beautiful aromatic food smell, which Brad could not appreciate.
So my COVID has killed my sense of smell, and it is nuts. And I did not realize I had no sense of smell until we were wandering around the show floor, and Lisa's like, oh, this popcorn smell is too intense. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
I mean, like, have you actually experienced New York City if you can't smell it?
Maybe not. I have been there before and smelled it. And I do know that I'm missing something. But at the same time, I'm kind of grateful. But it's just wild to me that I didn't realize I had lost my sense of smell until New York Comic Con. And it still has not come back weeks later. And I'm a little concerned, but it's also a little bit of a superpower.
I know. I'm kind of jealous that I didn't get any of the cool novel COVID symptoms.
Yeah.
And this is talking from a place of profound privilege because I'm truly, I'm very grateful that I'm healthy and all that stuff. But it would have been so fun to get one of those weird, unique symptoms, as long as it goes away.
No, I mean, I am starting to get a little nervous, but let's move on. The other thing you were talking about, New York Comic Con being superior to San Diego, is the Artist Alley.
Yes.
The Artist Alley is what? 5 times, 6 times as large as the Artist Alley in San Diego?
I compare it in time spent.
Yeah.
Like, when we go to San Diego, we might spend 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours in Artist Alley.
Yeah.
At New York Comic Con, we spent 2 days.
Yeah, 2 days. 2 days. 2 glorious days going from person to person, saying hello to folks that have been on the show, meeting new folks, begging new folks to come on our show, getting promises, verbal agreements. We're holding them to it.
Steve Orlando, we are slowly circling. We're coming at you.
He said 2023 it's going to happen. So,
that sounds really far away.
Alex Segura, I think we're going to get him on the show in the near future as well. We also got to meet for the first time Jonathan Hickman. He was there promoting Three Worlds, Three Moons. And, we are starstruck by Jonathan Hickman. He's written some of our all-time favorite runs, his Avengers run, Fantastic Four, of course, everything he's done with Krakoa. And I think meeting him was the encounter in which I was the most awkward and fanish. And I just have to accept that. You sometimes you come away from these like 5-minute meetings at artist tables and you go like, they're my best friend now. And I don't think that happened. I think Jonathan Hickman did get the full brunt of Brad's fanboy behavior. And for that, I am sorry, but it's just an honest reaction.
I think that is one thing about doing the Artist Alley. It's not just like how much cash do I have in my bank account or in my wallet or whatever. It's also like how much like social capital
Sure.
like I have left, or how many like, I guess to use a very comic book couples counseling term, like how many spoons I have left in my drawer.
Yeah.
We did find ourselves on the floor doing the kind of math of, can I meet one more person and not come across as a total weirdo? Like we did go, okay, we have to move this, and this person to the next day because if I come in now hot, it's going to be too much.
Yeah, well, and that's what happened with Jonathan Hickman. I have like that really awkward, like, I love you. And then you're like, okay, I think we should press pause on Artist Alley and move on to something else in return when we are more socially normal.
Our love tank is spent. We need to go upstairs and do some retail therapy.
One of my favorite experiences at New York Comic Con was getting to chat with Jay Lee for a good while. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before, but Jay Lee was the first artist I ever stood in line to get their autograph. This would have been around 1993 when he started his Namor run. And I would have been about 14, 13 years old. And I remember going to Joe Gumbinger's Burke Used Books and Comics and being so excited that I was going to meet somebody who made these things that I love so much. And I remember having a positive interaction with Jay Lee back then. And I wanted to meet him again and say, hey, FYI, you're a big part of the reason why I love comics today.
Why I'm here.
Yeah, why I'm here. And I didn't realize that Jay Lee grew up going to that comic book store. That was his comic book store. He's a Burke, Virginia kid, like myself. And that blew my mind. And we got to talk about Joe, rest in peace. And we got to talk about all the booksellers who used to sling comics there. And it was really lovely. But I had nothing with me to get signed at Jay Lee's table. And Jay Lee was doing sketches. He was all booked up by the time I got to him.
I think he was also selling prints.
He was selling prints and he was selling art. Now, we did not have a tube with us. That, I think, was also a critical failure. Next time we go to New York Comic Con, we got to bring a tube so we can carry prints around. So I decided that I was going to find one of those Namor comics up on the show floor. I decided it. It had to happen. Up there in that show floor, there had to be a dealer selling those Namor comics. And damn it, if you wouldn't know it, I went to the dollar comic bin at this one seller, and he had Jay Lee's first Namor comic there, the comic that I got signed back in 1993. So I paid my 99 cents, bought that comic, and brought it down to Jay Lee, and I was like, look what I got. And he's like, you found that issue upstairs?
Where did you get it? And we were like, not in the dollar bin, definitely.
I said, oh, they had a guy selling it up there. It was more than $1. I didn't say that. And it was a really lovely full circle moment for myself. And I think Jay Lee had a good time chatting about Joe Gumbinger's shop, but I know I will remember this moment from New York Comic Con for the rest of my life.
We also had a slightly tighter full circle moment, tighter time-wise, at the Midtown Comics booth after standing in line to meet Cliff Chiang once again.
Right, because back at San Diego Comic Con, we had a short conversation with Cliff Chiang and Brian K. Vaughan during the Paper Girls press room. And I love that conversation. It's one of my favorite moments from this year's San Diego. But you don't necessarily think that this guy's going to remember you out of the 6 reporters who were surrounding him at that table.
Exactly. So we started out by trying to couch our reintroduction in you probably don't remember us.
Yes.
We were in that press room, and he goes, "Oh yeah, you guys are comic book couples counseling?"
Yes.
And we were totally stunned, and he was like, "Yeah, I recognize you by your hair from the art for your podcast."
Right, yeah. Our show poster, as you hopefully have seen, from Karen Charm is an homage to that Green Arrow, Black Canary, Till Death Do Us Part trade paperback. And we got his blessing. I asked him, I was like, is it okay that we're homaging your poster? He's like, I love it.
Yeah, So to me, I credit that recognition entirely to Karen.
Right.
He wasn't really recognizing us as much as her art and how well it encapsulated us. But still, that was really
Super cool. Very cool. He was extremely nice. We chatted for a little while, got our Paper Girls signed, and
then we giggled away like two school children.
Yeah, it was a really special comic book couples counseling New York Comic-Con. And in that vein, we also met up with so many friends that we have made via Twitter and Instagram and our online community in the flesh.
Yeah, in the meat realm.
So gross.
So first we found Guido and Rob. I found them. We were flipping through floppies, I think at Victory Comics or somewhere, and they sidled up right next to us to flip, and I just bug, Guido and Rob, and they're like, hey!
Yeah, that was so much fun. And I think the next day, Elliot from Elliot Comic Art, who provides so much of our artwork as well, we were able to meet him for the first time and give him a sticker of his own artwork.
He did he was kind of, because he'd spent of anybody that we've met in the online realm, he's probably spent the most time just staring at pictures of us because a lot of his art includes our visages.
Yep.
And I saw him as an artist catch a glimpse of my profile and look kind of surprised. He was like, you know what? I spend so much time looking at you head on, and I've never really gotten to look at your profile. And I was like, don't you dare ever put my profile on any kind of art. There's a reason why all of the pictures of me are from head on. But I'm still lovely from the side. You guys can believe that.
And so we kept meeting up with them throughout the con. And on Saturday night, we escaped the Javits Center finally and had a little dinner with them over at the Gotham Market. And it was this comic book couples counseling meets Dear Watchers event. And we just got to geek out about all the things that we normally geek out about online, but this time in person.
You think sometimes when you meet someone from Twitter or whatever, you feel a little nervous or uncomfortable, but with Guido and Rob and Elliot, it was just so easy.
Yeah.
It felt it felt like just hanging out with old friends. It was the most natural thing in the world.
It did not feel like a first meeting. And it was interesting because after that, we had also made plans to meet up with Chris from the Oblivion Bar, and Dallas from Comics Collective, and Doug from Every Kind of Geek. And so we went from having tacos and margaritas. We went uptown, or I don't know if it's uptown. We went to Times Square or near Times Square. Again, we're not New Yorkers.
Our geography of New York is not
No,
literal.
It's not good. It's not good. We went to Joe's Pizza, which you can see in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. And we had a slice. And then we went to an Irish pub and had some beers. So Saturday night, we were really partying it up, which is very un-Gullickson-like.
Yeah, generally, I'm a never go to a second location kind of gal.
Yeah, but
I went to a second and a third.
Yeah,
just playing it fast and loose.
But Chris, Dallas, Doug, and Chris's friend Emily, we had such a good time just
bonding over podcast stuff, just talking about whatever, future plans.
It felt like that high school reunion thing, right? Where we're meeting up with old friends, except these old friends are online friends, and we're saying here's the state of the union regarding our lives. What's the state of the union regarding your lives? how can we keep supporting each other? It just felt extremely special.
Yeah.
Like if we were ranking like the best moments of the New York Comic Con, getting to hang out with Rob and Guido from Dear Watchers and Elliot, our artist, and Chris from Oblivion Bar, Dallas from Comics Collective, Doug from Every Kind of Geek, like that was like the truly special thing. And it's what I now expect from every New York Comic Con.
That's right. We want all of these same hangs.
Yeah.
We can,
plus more.
Yeah, plus more.
Plus more. And we did get to meet up with a bunch of other people too. Didn't get to have as long a conversations with these folks, but like Dan from the Gate Crashers, Daniel from the WMQ&A podcast.
Adam Reck from Battle of the Atom.
Adam Reck caught us as we were leaving the Sandman Audible experience off-site. We were just like decompressing from that wild room where Sandman came to life for us.
Which I guess we'll talk about on our Sandman episode.
Yeah, our
in
Patreon.
The Patreon.
If you're a Patreon listener, you'll get to hear about how we almost met Neil Gaiman, but totally didn't. So sign up for our Patreon. And so we ran into Adam. Adam actually saw us just trying to like, come down from the Audible high and sat down with us, and we chatted for a good long portion. Adam is actually doing the art for our holiday card this year. He's already completed it, and it is truly something delightful.
Epic.
I can't wait to start mailing those out to our patrons. Shazam! That's all I'll say.
And also, we got to see Pat Loika. Now we've seen him on both coasts.
Yes.
And he's doing really well. He's getting ready for his kidney transplant. And he showed us he's been doing a black and white series of just like of his friends not in cosplay. If you guys
portraits.
Don't follow Pat Loika on all of the... You totally should.
He's the ultimate cosplay photographer.
He really, truly has a vision. He really captures people beautifully.
And in San Diego, he took our photos, and that felt surreal to be... to have our souls trapped in his lens. Dream come true. Yeah, an honor.
And then, of course, Kat Calamia and Phil Falco.
So cool.
Always want more time with those two.
And we're going to see him in Baltimore in a couple weeks, so that's great. We should actually try to do a lunch with them. That feels like that needs to happen.
I hope we're cool enough.
We probably are not. What have we not talked about New York Comic Con wise? We did some panels. We went to the Remembering George Perez panel.
I think that would be my last highlight because it was such a beautiful event, and it was I love memorial panels. I know that sounds kind of like
morbid,
but what I like about them is it's really the place where people talk about other artists with total gratitude and with kind of with abandon.
I mean, there's celebrations, right?
Yeah.
And, we should always celebrate the people that are in our lives while we have them. But it's also nice to say thank you to the life that's left us. Mm-hmm. And on that panel was Alex Segura, Phil Jimenez, Constant Eza, Dan Jurgens, and Dan DiDio. And the stories they told were very meaningful, filled with joy, and it felt like a privilege to just hear them discuss George Perez. Sadly, right before New York Comic Con, we lost another immense talent, Kim Jung-gi, and they set up his table in Artist Alley, and it became this shrine to his life. Throughout the weekend, people would write notes on his table. They would leave drawings, portraits of Kim Jung-gi, flowers, so many flowers. It started off as one table, then stretched out to two tables, and periodically going back to that spot in Artist Alley and talking to the people who gathered around those two tables. That was also something unlike anything else I've experienced before, and truly beautiful.
I think sometimes places like Artist Alley can kind of be maligned for being very capitalistic.
Sure.
You're going and you're paying $5 for someone to write their name, and you're standing in line, and it can feel very material. But I think that Kim Jung-gi's table reminds us that artist alleys are so much more than that.
Yes.
They're an opportunity for us to commune as a community, which feels redundant to say, but that's what it is. Like, the art is, in a way, completed by the fans who read it. And so I really do feel the gratitude going both ways.
Yeah.
We get to go up to the writers and artists going, like, your ideas and your craft is enriching our lives. And they get to say, well, by you reading our stories, my life is enriched. And it's just like this place of celebration.
And this was the first time where I think I started to properly understand that. Being the awkward weirdo that I am, when you go to, I don't know, Nick Dragotta, right? And get your copy of Ghost Cage signed and thank him for coming on the podcast. And then he is so grateful for us. When I've been in experiences like that where the creator starts to go like, no, we couldn't do it without you. Or, I'd be like, you be quiet. You don't need to thank me. I need to thank you. But this was the first time where I felt like there was a legitimate relationship between us as the fan and them as the creator. And I'm starting to be less awkward in accepting the thanks of the creator when they give it to you. And I think once you get over that hurdle of awkwardness, you then can have a legitimate conversation like we did have with Nick Dragotta at his table.
And I want to make this clear. Getting over the hurdle of awkwardness is it's not being not awkward. Like, the awkwardness is the inevitability.
Yeah.
It's the resisting the awkwardness that is the impediment.
Yeah.
So if you just go into these conversations going like, hey, this isn't the most natural thing in the world, and we're both doing the best that we can. And then we have that, like, love exchange, which sounds dirty, but I don't mean it that way.
Yeah.
And like, that's the transaction in, like, a transcendent thing.
That's Artist Alley, the love exchange.
Yes.
Artist Alley is the love exchange. And once you accept their love as well as giving your own love, I think it's something transcendent. And this is the first time, honestly, where I don't know if I fully achieved that nirvana, but I'm closer to it. And I'm so excited about that fact.
I'm compressing in me, like, a joke about sticky carpets.
Stop
and I'm just
it.
like, okay, I'm sorry.
Stop it. So, I don't know, that was our New York Comic-Con experience. I think the only thing that we didn't really talk about was the fact that Lisa and I were utterly exhausted the entire time.
Yes.
Not only were we, we checked with our doctors. We were fully A-OK to travel and commune with people.
No longer contagious.
Yeah, no longer contagious after COVID, but we were still pretty wrung out. And then add to that the stress of travel. We drove up to New York. It's about a 4-hour drive from Virginia. And then we stayed in a hotel in New Jersey in the Meadowlands. And every morning we got up early, got into a car, used Spot Hero, lifesaver. Not an advertisement for Spot Hero, but it worked out really well for us. Didn't pay an arm and a leg thanks to Spot Hero. Stop saying Spot Hero, Brad. We would travel through the Lincoln Tunnel, get to our parking spot, and then do a full day of con. Now, here's the other thing that happened, all right? Our hotel had a fire alarm incident and evacuated one night.
Yes.
And it was terrifying. Normally, like, a fire alarm goes off and you just assume, like, some idiots pulled an alarm. It's a prank. It's something minor. But what happened is the alarm goes off. I wake up from dead sleep. Lisa barely wakes up. She's like, that's so loud. I was like, yeah, it's the fire alarm.
Brad, how did you make that noise? And please stop it.
Yeah. I was like, no, Lisa, that's a fire alarm. What freaked me out is I heard everyone running in our hallway. We were on the 4th floor of this hotel. And I look out the door. I open the door. I'm practically nude. I just have my underwear on. And there's a father, and he has his small child over his shoulder, and he's screaming at his slightly larger child, the building's on fire! We gotta get out! And when I saw him in his pure panic scream, the building's on fire, I went into panic mode.
Yeah.
And Lisa and I rushed out of the building.
We threw clothes on first.
Just a few clothes. Thankfully, I grabbed the keys to the car so you could go then sleep in the car while we waited for the fire truck to show up. But that was quite shocking, and I think also contributed to the fact that I never felt quite alive at New York Comic Con.
It's funny because this happened at a time of night that could have easily rolled into the morning.
Yes.
Like when it happened, it felt like 2 a.m. It felt like so late /
It was actually
early.
like right before 6 o'clock.
Yeah. So we go back up to the room and then I munch like a full night's worth of melatonin and go right back to sleep. And we had originally planned to get up at like 7 and we ended up getting up at 9:45.
Yeah.
That's another thing that's different about New York Comic Con is, I guess because it's in an even more urban environment, there's not like a culture of like sleeping outside in line.
Well, there is. I mean, people do it.
Yeah.
But it's generally inside the Javits Center. We did not choose to do it.
We
didn't mess with any standby lines.
We didn't really need to with our goals in mind.
Right. So that just wasn't the con for us. Like we weren't trying to like get into Hall H.
Or get into the Funko line or something ridiculous.
Right. So we were able to sleep in till 10 o'clock and still have a good full day at the con, just walking around like a zombie.
So before we close out our little like segment on New York Comic Con, do you have like future goals for like what's going to be part of our plan of attack for the upcoming New York Comic Con?
Oh, I mean, there's a few like silly things, right? We did not bring any books with us to the convention. So when we got there and we wanted to have our love exchanges with these artists, we had to spend money, quite a bit of money to do so.
We rebought books that we already had. Which is great because that means we now have doubles of stuff that we can give away.
Yeah, like you meet Steve Orlando, you want to get your Midnighter copy signed. We should have brought our Midnighter copy, but we didn't, so we bought his. And we just did that over and over and over again. So I think we spent way too much money at this New York Comic Con. And since we're driving up there, there's no reason we can't just rent a U-Haul truck, load it up with our comics, and bring it up to the New York Comic Con, right? And I think we would do that next time.
One thing I'd like to do next time is really meditate over the panels.
Yeah.
Because I know from talking to Guido and Rob in particular that there were really cool panels that we just straight up missed.
And I would recommend our listeners, and there will be a link in the show notes, to head over to their post-New York Comic Con Dear Watchers episodes.
Theirs is actually a 2-parter.
Yeah.
I recommend listening to both.
Absolutely. So I think we could have absorbed the panel schedule a little bit better. You know, the panels we did see, American-Born Chinese, great panel.
Perfect panel.
The George Perez panel, great panel. We also did the Periphery panel, the new Amazon Prime show starring Jack Rayner and Chloe Grace Moretz.
That was an okay panel.
It was an okay panel. I am interested in that show now in a way that I wasn't beforehand. And we did press for Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur.
Yes.
And we loved those first 2 episodes.
Oh, man. It's not exactly like the comic, but in the best way possible.
Shockingly.
Yeah,
Yes.
like, so the beginning of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, if you have read the comic, Lunella is very isolated, she's very lonely, and it comes across as she's very angsty in the beginning, which I love, but I don't think it would necessarily translate to a cartoon particularly well. Lunella in the TV version has a best girlfriend. She has a multi-generational family that she's close to and loves. And I really think it's like a really upbeat, representation-heavy, jubilant show. And I highly recommend it.
We were going to include those conversations with the producers and voice talent of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur in this episode, but the way that press room ended up working out, the
audio quality was not the best, and if you want more details, we'll tell you on our Patreon.
Okay, fair enough. Let's leave it at that. We will be doing an article for Film School Rejects when the show comes out, so look for that around February 11th. But again, like Lisa said, the show is so good. But I think we've done as good a job as we can talking about our experiences with the New York Comic Con.
So now everybody listening will also be there too at the next New York Comic Con, and they'll all say hi to us, and they'll all get 3-inch diameter stickers.
Yeah, okay, yes, I ordered some CBCC, NYCC exclusive stickers, and when I placed that order, I selected 1 inch by 1 inch, so they came out the size of a nickel. and they didn't look good. Poor Elliot had like spent all this time doing these incredible designs for us, and when I printed them out, they were blurry and awful. And I'm sorry, Lisa.
But if you guys are interested in that art, it is available on Elliot's TeePublic, and then you can wear like a shirt with her face on it. Or you can drink coffee or any beverage from a mug with her face on it. Or you could go shopping. You could go to the grocery store with a bag with her face on it.
Yeah, and people have already purchased shirts and totes of that design. And they've tweeted it out.
And it's not just Brad's mom.
No, I love seeing it. And we did have so many people come up to us at New York Comic Con to say hi to us. And it was a thrill. And yes, it was a little awkward to be like, look, I'm sure you're expecting some really cool New York Comic Con exclusive CBCC stickers, and here you go, the size of a nickel. And it got a laugh every time. Mm-hmm. I can tell you, if you see us at the Baltimore Comic Con exclusive stickers that Elliot has made, we've printed them out. They're 3x3. They look awesome.
Amazing.
And I'll probably reprint out the New York Comic Con ones. And if we gave you a sticker at New York Comic Con and you want a proper one, we'll mail you.
Yeah, just hit us up on Twitter and we will mail you the proper size sticker.
Yeah. It's so funny, so ridiculous. And, but that's a good way to lead into the other big highlight of the show, not just meeting all these rad people, our friends, but the listeners. Listeners coming up to us and saying, hi, Brad and Lisa, or hey, are you Comic Book Couples Counseling? Like, it was emotional every time, and I had to play it cool, and I never did.
And we didn't get pictures with all of you, and that breaks our hearts. Some of you did not post your pictures of us, and we are brokenhearted because we are too shy to be like, and now we want your picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Post your photos with CBCC on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, Justin. Yeah, Nate. Mochia posted his picture, and he got a better picture of us than we did. So that was really lovely.
I love Mochia's photo. So yeah, that's New York Comic Con. We need to move on to our actual conversation with Matt Lesniewski, talking about Faceless and the Family. Lisa and I have had a chance to read the first issue. It's so good, guys. We're already in the bag for everything Matt does. If you have not read Static or Crimson Flower, The Freak, his mind management bootleg issue, you owe it to yourself to do so. Matt makes comics unlike anyone else out there.
To me, his art and his writing style is like the very definition of like brilliant. When you call someone brilliant, like, because it's so different. It illuminates parts of your own imagination that you didn't know was there. What he's doing, no one else is doing.
Yeah.
He has a truly unique vision.
And he knows that. And I think that makes him a little nervous because the fear is that the Wednesday Warrior crowd will not respond to it. And that's where he is when we have this conversation. But we have the benefit of knowing that the Zoop campaign is already off to a rockin' start. The goal was $12,000. They've raised over $20,000. So yes, there is a fan base waiting for stories like this. So I think it'll be a little fun for listeners to go into this conversation knowing that success has already happened when you hear Matt reluctantly go, I don't know.
To give you a little like plot synopsis to get you into the story of Faceless and the Family, it opens with Faceless getting ready to end 10 years of isolation. He, at a low point in his life, joined this gang. He now wants to disassociate from that gang, so he's picked up a random pipe and he's wearing it over his face until he can get some reconstructive surgery. On his travels, he runs into this other guy, Jerry, and Jerry is also coming out of isolation, and he wants to start new memories in his life. So they start traveling together to meet their common goals. And then also in the first issue, there is this woman character. We don't learn that much about her, but from our little plot synopsis on Zoop, we know that this is Carp, and she is looking for a partner, like a life partner, a love relationship. And so in Matt's copy on Zoop, he calls it kind of like a Wizard of Oz type story, but in like an apocalyptic landscape.
And that totally fits. Although what I love about this conversation is you get to learn what the true inspiration for Faceless in the Family was. And it shocked me.
Yeah.
It shocked me. We're not going to spoil it here. But yes, so Faceless in the Family, a really fascinating apocalyptic story, science fiction, fantasy, drawn by Lesniewski, so it doesn't look like anything else. And it does share some thematic ties to his previous work, Static, which he did with Dark Horse Comics. I think your experience with Faceless in the Family would be enhanced by reading Static as well. But I think that's really going to do it for the setup to this conversation. Lisa and I are going to jump out of here and bring Matt into the love nest, and let's chit chat.
I've done that joke before.
Yeah, and we have our own theme, our own transition theme, Lisa.
Sorry, I just like to make that sound.
Matt, welcome back to Comic Book Couples Counseling. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it.
Oh, gosh. The last time we spoke about Static, one of the things that we focused on was how I marveled at your panels and how in those panels you can recognize the painstaking agony it must take to create these things. And here I am reading Faceless and the Family, which takes place on the Hand planet. And it just recalls that conversation once again. You seem very focused on what your hands can produce in the visual imagery of this book. Is that fair to say still?
Yeah, it's definitely a different approach, but
different approach. Let's pull that apart a little bit. What do you mean exactly by that?
Well, with Static, I intentionally wanted to see how much I could do with one page.
Yes.
And I was very into the whole, let's do 20 panels on a page, or maybe not 20, but a bunch of panels, and capture all those little moments in between, the moments that really matter, and see what we can do with that storytelling wise. And with this one, I intentionally wanted to, for the most part, kind of do the opposite of that, where I think the downside of Static, you weren't seeing the artwork as much because so much of it is either crammed into a tiny panel or it was distilled down. Whereas this one, I'm expanding, doing on average 3 to 5 panels a page. So they're bigger and you can see a lot more of that detail. And I'm having to, storytelling wise, I'm picking what I'm showing more. Whereas before it's, like I said, I'm getting every little nuance of what's happening. And in this, it's more, I don't know, I guess plot based. You know what I mean? I'm spending more time than ever on the actual art.
Oh, interesting.
Within a comic, like it's probably too much. I mean, at times I'll be thinking, on the next one, I'm going to do the opposite of this. And I'm going to figure out, and this is just an idea, but I'm going to do a comic where it's a very simplified version of what I'm doing now, or completely reinventing what I do so that I can really just churn out the pages, and it's more based on the storytelling more than anything, rather than the artwork itself. I mean, the storytelling always comes first, but with all those textures and different, details and that stuff, it's a choice, but I don't know. You always wonder if the grass is greener on the other side. Like if I was not doing this and I was producing more, would I be happier with that? I don't know. It's a constant, I don't know.
Well, it sounds to me, and I think we discussed this a little bit in our last conversation, but you are the type of creator who is always questioning the decisions they're making. And that could be a recipe for stagnation. But you always seem to eventually okay, well, this is the path I've picked. I've selected this approach and I'm going to stick with it on this comic at least.
Yeah. It's kind of like I've picked this, and now I can't just change it up midway. And because it's taking longer than ever, it's an even longer, contract with myself. But I'm kind of thinking of it like it's a home cooked comic, whereas it doesn't mean it's necessarily better, but I'm taking my time with it. I'm using all these different ingredients, all the different textures, and I'm really putting the love into it, and baking it in the oven slowly, and as opposed to the simplified idea is kind of like the microwave way, which that's cool too. But I picked this, and now I'm making it sound like it's bad. It's not at all. I'm enjoying it.
But it's arduous, right? Like that's the part of the enjoyment is the pain in which you put into it.
Sure. It's just the thing that gets me is like, I wish I was just doing more because I have more stories I want to tell. Yeah, I'm making it sound bad. It's not. I'm loving every minute of it.
It's really wonderful, and your imagination is just like so apparent on the page. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about the literal inspirations for setting this story on a hand planet where the fingers are these precious places.
The world itself, I actually thought of before this story. It was from a story I was writing maybe a year ago or a year before this, but it didn't fit the story. So I kind of set the hand planet aside and just thought, this is too good of an idea to throw away. This will fit something else. And so when I was coming up with this story, or when the story kind of came to me, it fit perfectly. Like it just, I don't know, it was the perfect setting. The actual story kind of spawned from this movie I was watching. It's called The Invitation. I think it used to be on Netflix.
Karen Kusama, right? Is the director?
Could be. I don't remember. It's kind of like a thriller thing. Essentially, it's these old friends that all kind of come to this one house, and
it's Karen Kusama. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, at the end of that, I got the idea, and I'm like, oh wait, what if I did a comic where it was like these different misfit characters, and they all originally the idea was way more simple. It was more similar to that too. The whole thing was going to be just in a house, similar to that movie. I'm like, that's not enough. No one's going to stick around for that, 4 or 5 issues. But that does happen in the beginning. So you can kind of see that inspiration there.
This is mind blowing because Lisa and I love that movie. We
really
adore that film. We saw that, I don't know, about 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
It came out in 2015.
Yeah, Fantastic Fest.
Yeah.
Right? And we interviewed Karen Kusama for our other podcast about it. Like, I don't want to spoil that movie for anyone who hasn't seen The Invitation, but the ending of The Invitation, the final shot of that movie and the revelation of that movie is so haunting. Mm-hmm. And I love hearing that Faceless kind of has...
It's spawned from that.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
I was blown away by it, but I didn't really hear too many people talking about it. I mean, I don't know. I just, at the end of it, it just hit me. I'm like, oh, wait, what if it inspired the original idea, and then it grew from there. So if anyone's seen that or hasn't seen it, check it out. I mean,
in your copy on Zoop, you actually bring up a different movie. You compare this story to The Wizard of Oz, and then we've only gotten to read the first issue. But it seems to be like a story about like self-acceptance and, the objects our characters are going for are like related to your identity. Like Faceless wants a face. Jerry wants his memories back. Carp wants a family. Like, so was the, Wizard of Oz inspiration something that you found like in retrospect? Or was that also in there from the beginning?
Yeah, it was more after the fact. But I just kind of, I'm not the best with explaining my ideas or, selling them in quotes. So that was a good way of, I just kind of saw a resemblance there. Oh, it's this group of odd yet lovable characters, and they're all each looking for one thing. What does that remind you of? Reminds me of The Wizard of Oz, and they're going to this place to get this thing. And you always hear that, oh, my story is this meets this. Mm-hmm. To make it even simpler, think of it like my own version of that. Not many people have seen The Invitation, or if you compare it to The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
So,
but if somebody tells me, oh, this comic book is The Wizard of Oz meets The Invitation,
Ooh,
It's like, oh, I'm reading that twice.
I
That sounds
should do that.
amazing.
I should use that.
I reread Static also to prepare for this interview, and I noticed some like connective theme tissue between the two works. Like they both open up with this individual that's living in a place of regret, where they've been kind of goal drifting, which is like they have been like actively maintaining a status quo that they hate,
Mhm.
and they feel themselves like not moving in the direction of like happiness or satisfaction. Is this connective theme purposeful, or is this something you feel like you're like working through personally?
Oh man. I mean, every comic that I've done, there's some level of it's personal and it comes from me. And there's aspects of it that are completely made up and it's fictional and whatever. But if anything, I'm trying to differentiate the two to some extent. But there is, I feel like part of me is, why fight that? If that's really what I'm trying to say, or that's something I want to explore through comics, why not? And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never an intentional thing. I'm never, trying to like I have an agenda, and if you don't get it, you're wrong. I don't know. I guess it's just kind of shining through, maybe in an obvious way, maybe not obvious to some. I don't know. It's hopefully that is one thing that going into this, I was a little hesitant to, I don't know, have out like, I don't know, maybe I have to switch it up a little bit. But
No.
I mean,
No, Lisa
I'm
definitely
not saying
does
it's a bad thing. But you do see that a lot with different creators across music, movies, whatever. There's this theme that keeps popping up, or a similar theme. And I feel like,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe this is part of my thing, but it's just, I'm not that far removed from when I made Static. This is only, when I first started coming up with this, it was probably a little over a year ago. So, I mean, it's still me. It's all coming from me. So,
Well, that's like the great thing about your books, Matt. I go back to The Freak. I look at Static. I look at Faceless in the Family, and they all feel thematically forward. And maybe that speaks to who we are as readers, because we tend to be folks who go digging for theme and finding ourselves and how we can relate to the themes that are being discussed in these books. But maybe also that's the type of creator you are. You are a thematically forward creator.
yeah. And you have to think every book could be someone's first time reading my work. So at the very least, it's like, well, they haven't heard this yet. So I don't know. Part of me thinks about it too much, and then another part of me tries not to think about it at all. And it's like, if this is authentically what I'm trying to create, then just let it happen. I don't know. I'm not sure what else to say about that.
Isn't it also kind of dangerous for the artists to get too worked up in what their themes are? Isn't that sort of the reader's problem?
Definitely. I mean, I don't even know if it's a problem at all. It's
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, while I'm making it, I'm not analyzing it in that way as much. I'm kind of just following what feels right, I guess. I mean, so much of it is the drawing part, because that takes the longest. So once I'm in that zone, I'm kind of in this robotic, just produce art mode. And I'm not now the thinking about theme or any of the other stuff, it's not as much on my mind. So once that's kind of figured out, it's a little bit in the background. And then it's maybe after the fact, or when I'm doing interviews, that I'm having to look back on it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just I'm not always thinking about it that much. I don't know.
It's such a treat for us to be able to chat with a writer artist, like a letterer. Like, you're the whole package, right? Like Faceless in the Family is like you. It just explodes from you. What's interesting to hear you speak is this idea of, there's Matt the writer who comes up with the idea and where this story is driving, and then there's Matt the artist who can then kind of relax and just execute the writer's vision.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just how I do it. I don't know. I don't know if other people do it a different way, but I just go through the phases. First, it's the imagination, just pacing around, thinking about this thing, and it's all in my head, and I'm seeing it. That's how I do even, commissions or just little sketches. I see it first, and then I have that to work off of. I'm not making it in the moment.
Yeah.
I don't know if people do that, but it's all, I'm envisioning it. Then I have to make sense of it and put it into story form. So from there I write. Now I'm writer Matt, and then I'm doing my best to write for myself, put it into full script. Then, like you said, I can kind of, well, it's different parts of the brain. I'm putting that part to the side. Now I'm just, all right, let's make this happen. Put it into comic book form.
And what's lovely for your audience, especially those like us who happen to also be patrons, is we get to watch the slow process through your Patreon feed of creation. Because like we signed up for your Patreon when Static came out, and back then we started to see doodles of characters and designs of what would ultimately be revealed as Faceless and the Family. And I'm wondering about the creation process on this book. You have this hand planet that came from someplace else, and then you have Faceless's story. Like, does the story come first? Does the design of the characters come first? Like when you were initially putting out those designs on your Patreon feed of Faceless, like, did you know like what his story was?
I want to say I definitely already had, that was probably in the middle of the writing phase, or the phase where I'm somewhere in between, where I'm thinking about the story already, and I'm trying to, like, something can be, like I said, it is in my head, but sometimes it can be blurry. So when I'm sketching out these characters, that's me making it real. I probably already had the idea somewhat fleshed out. It story-wise, but that might have been an older version of it, because there was two versions of this where it was a longer, more dense, probably more boring version of it, where it was going to be like 40-page issues, and more similar to Static, where I was getting more of those slower moments, or the in-between, highlighting different parts of what's going on. Then I had this other comic come up that I thought I was going to do, so I set this aside, and then that didn't happen. So then I returned to this, and I rewrote the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
And just realized, like, no one's going to want this anyway, because it's too weird, and it's too, so believe it or not, this version that you have is like the mainstream version, the cut down, like, all right, 20 something pages. It's more snappy as far as plot moments, like just get to the next thing. It starts off a little slow, but definitely once it's about midway, it doesn't stop. It's pretty much, it's moving along, which is a little different from what I did before, especially in like issue 2 and 3.
I want to get into your character building a little bit, because this story focuses around 4 people who are coming out of isolation with kind of like each person has different needs. And when you were setting up those 4 characters, like how were you thinking in terms of contrast and really rounding out this little family we're going to get to meet?
I definitely took a lot of time to figure them out before I even saw them in my head. It might sound crazy, but I was just thinking, who is this person, and how do they make sense in this family, or how would they contrast, who else is there? There would be time where I just set it aside, and it just, nothing was coming to me, or before anything I was just thinking about what they're maybe lacking, or the thing that they're looking for, and it would change. And I just had descriptions, and I didn't necessarily have a name or what they looked like, but from that, then I would get the look once I figured that out.
Faceless is escaping what he says is 10 years of isolation. And I feel like I've been in 10 years of isolation over the past 2 years, right? And given our pandemic living, this desire now where things are now starting to be manageable, I suppose, says somebody who just had COVID,
Oh man.
who's just getting over COVID. I feel like the last 2 years I've been on pause, and I'm desperate to be
Right.
out of pause. Yeah.
Sometimes, like I said, I feel like sometimes my ideas are too weird, or they're maybe people don't relate to them, but at least there's that. I did have that in mind, like, well, at least everyone can relate to this.
I love, Matt, that you're like, I don't know how people will respond. Like, to me, as I'm going to call myself a super fan of yours. I've read every
wow.
single work of yours that's available.
Thank
You
you.
know, Mind Management Bootleg, your issue is my favorite issue of Mind Management Bootleg, and I love that series.
Wow. Thank you.
Oh, you're totally welcome. And I just like, for me, when I hand your work to somebody, when I point somebody to your work, they go, shit, I've never seen anything else like this. Your book, your work is instinctively recognizable as something apart from what else is being put out there in the world. And I would think that would give me, as the creator, a sense of confidence.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what people like. That's
Sure.
That's one thing. The longer I'm doing this, the less I know what people like, and I never know what's going to get a good response or not. Like, truly,
Sure.
I'm lost. So that's why I try to be myself and just do what I enjoy, and hopefully that resonates through it. And whoever likes that, it's kind of like being yourself in life. I kind of do that. I try to use that way of thinking with my art. Like, you could try to be with the cool kids and do what they think is going to be cool and do that thing and try to make people like you or whatever. Or you could just be yourself, and the people who actually like you for who you are, they gravitate to you. So I just try to do that, because I don't know what people like. I don't know what's cool. I don't know. That's kind of my philosophy on it. I just try to follow my own thing, and if it for better or for worse, maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe I'm going down a road that's no one's. I don't know.
Well, the challenge, I think, is especially with mainstream comic book audiences, and it's kind of funny to talk about mainstream comic book audiences because comic books are not the mainstream. Not everyone in the world is reading comic books like they should. But I guess if we're just thinking about the big two, Marvel and DC, and the superhero aesthetic, your work doesn't align with what you find in the Avengers every month.
Right.
But that's also the case for like Daniel Warren Johnson, right? And you look at his work, you go like, well, that's not typical superhero artwork. And when a Wednesday Warrior first encounters it, there's like, that doesn't look like how my comic should look like.
Like, it's the same with Mike Mignola, where Mike Mignola, did mainstream comic books and they all look weird. But in his own context, doing his own thing, it's some of the most brilliant stuff ever made.
And I think the trick is to woo an audience to your context.
I know. I don't know how to do that. So
yeah, good luck. I don't know either.
Well, I think that, so you have your comic up on Zoop, which is another fan crowdfunding. How come I forgot that word? All of the words to forget. It's like a crowdfunding operation. Like, does that help you feel more confident, where it's just like, well, the people who want to read this are directly, there's not that temptation to try to woo people who will never like your work?
I mean, and if I knew what would make me feel confident, I would go to that. I don't know. Nothing does. I don't know. There is that benefit. It's purely direct to whoever is interested. I was going to say something else. I forgot.
Well, Zoop is, a relatively new crowdfunding organization, and I'm fascinated by it. And I was watching your YouTube video from a few weeks back talking about the upcoming launch on October 11th. And one of the things you said in your video is, it's such a relief to have a third party deal with all the campaigning side of things. Like, if you were doing Kickstarter, like, that's a second job and a third job, beyond just the creation process.
Absolutely. That's that's the biggest thing. Like it's another possible thing you could do as a creator, and it's great that it's there, but it's kind of always scared me away because I barely have. Like I said, I'm spending more time than ever on this actual book. There's no way I have time to print stuff out or track people down and pack stuff up, ship it out, and respond to everybody. And I'm already kind of doing that anyway, promoting the book.
Yeah.
So anything that's off my shoulders, I appreciate it. It's like great. They can handle that stuff, and I can spend more time doing what I'm actually good at.
There's a moment in that video where you even mention how when you run a campaign, you need to know where you're going to put the palette of books once they're printed.
Right.
Like, you need the space. Like, there's just so many aspects to comics that the consumer doesn't really think about. And I love having conversations like this one where, you're like, Kickstarter's great, but it's also a huge pain in the butt.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a new alternative. And anytime there's a new alternative, it's exciting for the market.
Yeah, that's why I think Zoop is great. You get to have your cake and eat it too with them.
Yeah.
Like, you get the benefits of crowdfunding, but you don't have to do any of that other stuff. So it's perfect for me.
It sounds to me like you do like a lot of like tinkering, and you go like, I wish I could do more pages in a day, or maybe if I do something different, this will work better. Like, you're always like changing up your method. Do you ever think about, like, in an ideal world, if I had all of the time in the world, I would work in this specific way? Do you have like your ideal world setting to create your art?
You mean within reality, right?
No, not within reality.
Oh, not within reality? Then
Yeah.
then I would draw just the way I am. Well, even what I'm doing now, I'm still holding back.
Right.
That's speaking of readers not knowing certain things that go into this stuff. Like, almost every comic you're reading, you're only seeing maybe 50% of what an artist is capable of. So with part of why I'm spending a little bit more time is I don't have that publisher behind me telling me, oh, you need to get this done at this time. So that kind of frees me up to do maybe 80% of what I'm capable of, but it's just taking so much longer. So to your question, if I could do 100% page a day, not even in a day, I would say the regular 9 to 5 hours. If I could do that, 9 to 5 hours, weekends off. I mean, if you want the dream, if I could just take a pill that makes me do that, I'm taking it.
We love to dream. We love to dream, and we love to dream for others. We hope that pill gets taken someday, Matt.
I would love it.
So the book comes out, or the campaign launches on October 11th from Zoop. We have links in the show notes for it. You're going to be at New York Comic Con. This episode's coming out after New York Comic Con, so hopefully we've all had an absolute bash attending the convention this year. This is going to be our first time going to New York Comic Con. This is going to be your second time.
Yep.
What do you hope to get from the experience of a convention, especially now post-pandemic?
Well, this one's
not post-pandemic,
because we both just had COVID.
We just had COVID, but in this new world order, I guess
this one's different than all the others, just because this one, I wasn't even planning to go to this one, because I was gonna basically not do any conventions this year so that I could spend all my time doing the actual book, and then it would come out next year, because I initially had a publisher, and it's a whole long story, but that kind of crumbled, and I was left to figure out a new plan. And probably a week ago, another artist contacted me and just said, oh, I can't make it, but I have this table. Do you want it? And it just so happens that New York Comic Con is a day before the campaign launches.
Yeah.
So I figured, perfect. This is perfect. It fell out from out of the sky. I need to take full advantage of this and just get a hotel. And so for this show, mainly it's all about just getting people to sign up to the pre-launch page, and people who don't know it's happening or don't know who I am at all. And because that happens to me all the time. I'll see an artist that I'm a fan of, and the campaign's over, and I'm just then finding out about it. And so it's any opportunity I have to get the word out. I'll have some of my old books and stuff, but the main focus for this is to try to get people's attention on that. And I'm going to have the original art from the first issue. And that's the main thing. Just, I don't care if I make $1. It's all about, hey, pay attention to this. Maybe you bought my old books. I got this one coming up. So yeah, that's the main thing.
Well, we're headed to your table right when we get there. I'm so excited to look at your art in person. I've never seen it with my own eyes. So I'm excited to just put them on those pages. And, Lisa and I, we're going to do our part trying to get people hyped for Faceless in the Family. We freaking loved the comic. We love Static.
I'm so excited.
And we want all our listeners to be reading your work. And we want to point them to where you are online. So we've got the link in the show notes for Zoop, but just in case people don't look at the show notes, where can they find you, Matt?
Zoop.gg is the actual website, not .com, zoop.gg, and you could find it there. And then if you want, follow me online. I'll be having updates of me, working on the book and any future stuff. Instagram at Matt Draws Comics, no spaces or anything. Twitter is just my name, Matt Lesniewski. And then I've got a YouTube channel if anyone cares about that. And that's just my name too. So you can find my stuff there.
And you've got a Patreon, which is a really killer artist Patreon.
Yes, especially if you love process.
Yeah.
If you love just unfiltered brilliance.
It's all there.
It's really great.
Yeah, basically I'm on there. I'm doing every commission or every panel that I draw, I try to get anywhere from 5 to 10 images of process of me doing the actual panel. So you can see from pencils to lettering to the different phases of inking all the way to the finished panel. You'll be able to see with each panel of the comic, it's on there.
It's a tremendous privilege to have that kind of insight into your creative process. And I think anybody who's any kind of artist, not just like visual artist, but writer, like just any kind of artist would be inspired by what you're doing.
I don't know, maybe.
Well,
just accept it.
Okay.
Just accept it. Take the love. It's for you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're going to have to get ready because we're going to come find you at New York and we're going to fangirl and fanboy.
We're going to give you compliments to your face.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's happening.
I gotta prepare for this.
You do. Matt, thank you so much. I appreciate
both of you for all the kind words and having me on again. It means the world. Like I spent all this time doing this stuff, and then it's like, does anyone care? Or I don't know. So to hear this, it means a lot. I appreciate it.
Well, anytime you need words of affirmation, Matt, just tweet at us and we'll give them to you.
All right. I'll keep it in mind.
So on that note, we'll see you in New York. Take care.
I'll see you there.
I love how this conversation ends, Lisa, with you practically shaking Matt by the shoulders through the Zoom, saying like, no, you are amazing.
For some reason, like I identify with Matt so much because I too sometimes suffer from like a lack of confidence. So when someone comes at you with genuine curiosity about who you are and what you do, you come from a place of like defensiveness. Like, why would you possibly want to know? And I wanted to make it clear, it's because I'm a genuine fan.
I think the way that I interpret Matt's response to our effusive praise is the same way that I respond to people when they come up to us at conventions or they tweet at us and tell us how much they love the show. When we first started doing the podcast, I almost wanted to stop those conversations immediately. Like, I didn't want to take any praise at all. And like, oh, people are listening? Gross. No, thank you. But over time, as I've become a little more used to, not totally used to, because we could still use more compliments, the more I've gotten used to people saying nice things about what we do on Comic Book Couples Counseling, the better I've gotten at accepting those compliments. But sometimes it really is hard to accept compliments, especially when the people giving those compliments are coming in so hot like we were with Matt and his work.
Yeah, I think also it goes back to what we were talking about in the Artist Alley, where like sometimes when you make something, you just you think about the conversation between you and that thing. And I think that that's kind of how we were doing the podcast in the beginning.
Sure.
Where it, like, yes, we were putting it out for everyone to hear, but it was also kind of like our little like private diary moment almost.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
We would record it with complete disregard of the idea that anybody would listen.
And at the beginning, no one was listening.
Exactly, which was perfect. No. But then over time, we've embraced the idea that what we really want to do is build like a community.
Yeah.
And we have to realize that when you put something out in the world, there is this back and forth about it. And I think that Matt will find with Faceless and the family, people are going to, like I did in this interview, people are going to want to come up to him and go like, I identify with this character because of this reason that is very personal and would be in other contexts kind of private.
I have this sense of pride over Faceless and the Family and Matt Lesniewski, which I should not. But because I consider myself one of the early Matt Lesniewski fans.
We're total hipsters for Matt Lesniewski.
We were there at the Freak, everyone. The Freak.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we went and saw Matt at New York Comic Con and we went to his table on that first day to say hello, he was feeling, I think, a lot like how he was feeling in this conversation, this sense of unease. He's about to unleash this crowdfunding campaign. I can't even really process the amount of anxiety that must cause in someone. But you could see that he was nervous about starting off the con. And we chatted with him. We got to put our eyes on the original pages.
I felt so spoiled flipping through his notebook, his portfolio on his table, because it's like literally the pages of Faceless and the Family, issue 1, in order.
The splash page of the Hand Planet, which he's doing as a print on Zoop, it's like looking at the Grand Canyon, right? Like you drive across the country, you go to the Grand Canyon, you've seen postcards before, you know it's going to be beautiful, but then suddenly you're looking at it and you're like, oh my God. Right. There's this awesomeness that you can't really put into words. And that's what that splash page did for me. And it also caused us to do something we've never done before because we really can't generally afford it. But thankfully, Matt's prices were pretty reasonable. We purchased a commission from Matt. And when we purchased the commission, Matt was in the middle of doing another commission, and he wasn't sure he was going to have a ton of time to do it because he was finding doing commissions on the con floor very challenging with all the noise and the interruptions. And we were like, well, we would, he goes, what character would it be? and now it's like a test, right?
Right.
Maybe he won't do a commission if we're like, we want a Spawn.
Right.
We want a Hellboy. But what we really wanted was a Matt Lesniewski character. And so we left it up to him. We said, we would love a Freak, maybe Emmett Stone or a Faceless. And he said, well, I guess I could do that. And he ended up doing an Emmett Stone for us. And it's our first commission that we've ever done at a Comic-Con. And wow, it's truly beautiful.
We are so proud to own this piece. And he was genuinely, at the end of the convention, excited to give it to us. And I like the fact that he was like, okay, you've seen this character. Let me try something a little different with the shading.
Yes.
And he was so excited to show us, I approached this a little differently. And it turned out to be really just a really special piece of art.
You can go to our CBCC podcast Twitter or Instagram, and you can see the commission of Emmett. And he's doing kind of like this single layer of lighting. It has a film noir quality. Emmett hasn't quite looked like this before. And that did make the piece feel even more special. And like you said, by the end of the con, having now had a bunch of people like us come up to his table, browse through that portfolio and see the incredible work and scan that QR code on his desk to prepare themselves to crowdfund the Zoop campaign, he was feeling a lot of love.
Right. I think that it was like the literal like manifestation of having your love tank filled.
Yes.
Like so many people came up to him, like perhaps already as fans, perhaps checking out his stuff for the first time, and nobody who would walk up to that table would not be in complete awe of what he does.
Yeah. And so it's neat to have had this conversation where he's a week away from launching the Zoop campaign, and then go to see him at Comic-Con, and he's a few days from doing the Zoop campaign. And then now, here we are, days after the Zoop campaign has launched, which you can still contribute to, by the way.
You're going to want
He's met the goal, but now he is meeting stretch goals. The comic is becoming thicker and thicker with bonus material. And I like hit the link in our show notes. Go browse Matt Lesniewski's artwork, read up on Faceless in the Family, and support a cartoonist who does it all. Writing, penciling, inking, lettering. This is a true gem of a comic. We don't get too many of these in the industry these days. So I think you will really want to support Faceless in the Family.
And we're hoping that once Faceless in the Family has reached its first like benchmark plot-wise, to have Matt back and to talk about it again. Because I do like getting into theme. And you know what? I'm going to get to the bottom of it whether he wants to or not.
We've had so many conversations with filmmakers after...
Filmmakers?
With cartoonists and filmmakers. But with cartoonists where they've only given us one issue... And Lisa just cannot stand only having a tease of a story.
Because it's like, how do you have a discussion about like an eighth of a thought?
Yeah. And so, we've told Matt Lesniewski, we want you back on to talk Faceless in the Family. We've gone to Christian Ward, and we like Christian Ward. Now that Bloodstained Teeth is almost complete, we need you back on.
We've gone back to Chris Condon. We're like, hey, you know what? I have a lot of stuff to say about that Texas blood.
Yeah. And, Daniel Warren Johnson, we're like, we don't even want to talk to you about Do a Powerbomb until it's done. And so we love these like first issue conversations. But the ones we really want to dig into are the ones where we've seen the whole picture.
Which is the least helpful for these creators because they're like, well, the book is already like, why would I promote? Like, they're always into promoting the next thing. And we're like, no, we want to talk about the last thing, please.
So we're going to make that happen too. But I hope you've all enjoyed our tour through our first New York Comic-Con.
Hopefully next time you'll join us.
Yeah, and we're definitely doing another New York Comic-Con in some fashion. Doing Fantastic Fest and going right into New York Comic-Con maybe was not the best, and catching COVID in the middle.
Yeah. Work-wise, it was a lean month. October was a lean month.
And we're going into Baltimore Comic-Con in a week.
Totally broke.
So I'm actually a little nervous about Baltimore Comic-Con.
Baltimore Comic-Con might be more of just like a commune with the people and less like drop a ton of money.
Yeah. But I love Baltimore Comic-Con. That's one of my favorite Comic-Cons for different reasons. But yes, hit us up on Twitter and Instagram, CBCC Podcast. We want to hear from you. If you did attend the New York Comic-Con, we definitely want to hear your stories. We definitely want to look at your cosplay photos. The cosplay at New York Comic-Con.
Oh my goodness. It was so fun. Brad, what was your favorite cosplay of New York Comic-Con?
There was so much that I loved, but I think my favorite was the Kill or Be Killed cosplay based on the Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips.
Because it's so specific.
It's so specific, and he had created the demon character out of a cardboard piece of cardboard. That's how it works. And it was like floating above his head, haunting him wherever he went. And you could spot him across Artist Alley going to all the cool people. And you'd just be like, yeah, kill or be killed.
Yeah, that's a great one because like the artistry level doesn't have to be like craft-wise, it's not like the most complicated thing ever, but in terms of just like executing what the comic looks like, like
perfect.
the most literal translation.
Perfect. And anyone who's a fan of that comic is going to love that guy forever.
Yes. My favorite, because I'm sure you're going to turn the tables back to me.
I was.
Was the Nope cosplay with the cloud.
Yeah.
Because it was like one of those where I passed it a couple of times without completely realizing what it was.
Yeah.
There was such a huge anime presence at New York Comic Con that I'm just used to going like, that looks cool. Have no idea what it is. But I caught the flag tail sticking out of the bottom of the cloud and then the bloody legs, and it all came together.
Yeah.
And I was like, and Nope was a movie that we actually saw. It was our Comic-Con, our San Diego Comic-Con movie.
Yep.
And like when we first watched it, we were exhausted and it was like a fever dream. And now I have revisited it a handful of times. And so like to see that kind of representation on the New York Comic-Con floor was just so cool. And the way it was done was so clever. Like he just created, it was almost like a jellyfish.
Yes.
Where like he was this big round cloud, but then like he would move underneath the cloud and it would look like it was breathing.
So good. Again, go to our Instagram, Twitter feed, CBCC Podcast. We have video of it. It is an astonishing cosplay.
There is one cosplay that has done extremely well for us on Instagram.
That's the Autobot, Optimus Prime. Almost forgot Prime's name.
Oh my goodness.
I'm so sorry, Prime. And he starts out as a truck and then literally transforms.
Mm-hmm.
And so a transforming cosplay, pretty darn nifty. And the Instagram followers love that one. Now, the cosplay that's done the best on Twitter is the Namor the Submariner cosplay based on the Wakanda Forever style of Namor. And it's basically a naked dude on the con floor with a blow-up shark.
So who's not going to like that?
Yeah, thousands of people are going to like it, it turns out.
People are so excited for Namor in the MCU, and it's hard not to get like caught up in that enthusiasm. I'm just so stoked.
Yeah, we're going to be seeing a lot of that specific Namor cosplay from buff people in the future.
And it's just like, I gotta stay on this planet.
Yes.
I want to see more of that.
On that note, I think we are going to end our show, Lisa. How do we get out of here?
Do you want me to roll into the outro, or are we going to talk about what's coming up on the show next episode?
Oh, yeah. This podcast is not done.
We have more information for you.
More episodes are in our future. Yes, so hopefully you all listened to our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990 movie discussion that we had with the Turtle Dork, Brian Young.
We know you have, because that episode has gotten a lot of love. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, one of our most popular episodes of the year. So we are going to continue our conversation around the four brothers, now diving into the comics themselves. And our next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episode will cover the first 7 issues of the Eastman and Laird series. We're going right back to the very beginning of the Turtles. I'm so excited to have a conversation with Lisa about those comics because I love those comics, and Lisa and I haven't talked too much about those comics, but I don't think they're necessarily her jam.
They're not necessarily like peak Ninja Turtles, I hope.
Right.
Because they are very plot.
Right, and Eastman and Laird are still trying to figure out the relationship dynamics between the four brothers, but I think that's what makes the conversation around those issues so interesting, and I am excited to have that with you, Lisa.
And there's still plenty of material there.
Yes. And then after that, we're going to go over to the Archie Ninja Turtles comics, and then over to the IDW Ninja Turtles comics, and then concluding our 5-episode Ninja Turtles series with IDW's The Last Ronin, which, if you're a Patreon subscriber, you were there when Lisa and I read the first issue and had an immediate response to it. We loved The Last Ronin. It's such a heartbreaking comic. Maybe a sad place to end our Ninja Turtles conversation, but we don't mind getting sad.
We are comic book couples counseling after all. We are engaging with the Turtles to talk about sibling relationships in the hopes of making our relationships with my siblings, because Brad's an only child, a little bit better. And we are not experts, so we need someone to guide us. And for the Ninja Turtles, our relationship expert will be Dawn Hubner, PhD, using her book, The Sibling Survival Guide, Surefire Ways to Solve Conflicts, Reduce Rivalry, and Have More Fun with Your Brothers and Sisters. Oh no, Brad, look at the time.
Huh?
Our spot hero is about to run out. And I
Oh, no.
think that if you don't get your car in time, they just set it on fire.
We came very close to that happening in New York.
So where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
You can find me on all social medias at MouthDork. If you have words of affirmation for our logo, you can send them to Aaron Prescott at A Cool Hand Fluke. And if you have words of affirmation for our radical banner art and show posters, send them to Karen Charm at Karen_X-Men fan. Lisa, where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
I am always accepting words of affirmation at Sidewalk Siren on Instagram and Twitter. If you'd like to spend more quality time with us, you can subscribe to us on Podbean, Stitcher, Google, and Apple Podcasts. I feel like one's missing. YouTube. If you'd like to get exclusive, you can join our Patreon, where you'll get more content, including weekly bonus episodes.
We really should do more with that YouTube page. It's pretty pathetic.
Really, if you really want to bring us down a peg, you can look at our YouTube follows.
No
Not
thanks.
that many.
No
Nobody's hitting
thanks.
that subscribe and dinging that bell.
Don't do that. If you'd like to reach out and touch us electronically, you can email the podcast, cbccpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website, comicbookcouplescounseling.com, or follow us on Instagram and Twitter at CBCC Podcast.
You can give us the gift of 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to do an act of service, why not write a review of the show while you're there? We are fluent and receptive in all 5 love languages. It really warms our hearts and helps the pod. I've been struggling this whole episode with I still have some cold symptoms.
Yeah, it's a little vocal fry. But until next time, friends, when we are healthy and rejuvenated and sounding crisp and fresh, keep your love tank full.
And your psychic rapport open.
Doopy doopy.
Bum bum ba da bum bum ba da ba.
You sound fine, Lisa.
I don't know. I sound a little nasal and phlegmy.